Alright, welcome back to another episode of Alternate Take. This is going to be about Captain America Civil War.
Yes, a movie we were extremely excited to see when it came out.
Yes, which was still good, but there were some scenes we wanted to change.
Yeah.
So basically, there were some small changes that I immediately thought of when I first watched it, so did you.
Yeah.
So that was years ago when we saw the movie. So we rewatched it recently to kind of tackle these small changes and, kind of figure what we wanted to say for the video. But then in watching it, we realized two things. One, the initial debate in the movie is super weak.
The one they have in the compound?
The one they have in the compound is super weak. So we have, at the end of this video, we have a full reworking of that debate.
Yes.
And
we're not acting because we're not
acting it, but we're talking it out. And then we also have, in a separate video coming up, a longer take in which we rewrite the entire movie from the ground up because we thought it was that weak on the recent rewatch we just did. But in this video, it's going to mainly be just a shorter retake that we had of the smaller ideas we wanted to change.
Yes.
That we think a couple small changes can really elevate this movie up a lot.
Yeah,
just a couple small things.
It really is what we have it down to. I think if I look quickly at the notes, two scenes we need to change.
Two real scenes, really.
Yeah.
So that's basically the idea of what alternate takes are going to be. It's just either a small change or a big change in any kind of movie or book or anything that we would like to see happen differently than the end product that we got.
Yeah.
So we already have a couple on the channel. This is going to be one of the bigger ones though. So
yeah, the Civil War one is something that's stuck with us for years. I mean, it came out how many years ago now? 4 years ago?
4 or 5, yeah.
4 or 5 years ago. And then when we were rewatching recently, we're like, you know what? It's about time.
About time. We do a full one.
We gotta do the small rewrite, the one that's like the more obvious one, and then we're gonna do the big one too.
The big one. Yep,
also,
we
didn't mention the director chairs.
Yes.
They're totally not camping chairs.
These are not camping or barbecue chairs. These are official director chairs from Hollywood.
They're certainly not hand-me-downs.
They're not hand-me-downs. They're not old at all.
No.
They're brand new.
We have high budget.
High budget. This is
quality
high budget.
content.
Look at the studio.
Yeah.
Look at the studio.
Look, we have a what is it, clapper?
Clapperboard? Look at that clapper. It's got words on it.
What, do you think we're not made of money?
Yeah, what is this? Come on.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, let's start with the alternate take.
Yeah. So, we're going to go right into the War Machine thing.
We'll go, so first off, the big thing with this movie, the way they had it written, was that no matter what your thoughts were on the Sokovia Accords, Captain America was basically de facto correct in everything.
Very painful as an Iron Man fan.
Quick summary about the Accords, and then just mention them. Basically, this movie's about the UN writes up some accords for the Avengers to sign that dictates what they can and can't do, and it gives the government full control over the Avengers. This ideology just splits the Avengers in half, and then Civil War ensues over that. So that's basically what happened. You guys probably remember it.
Civil War,
yeah.
It didn't really feel like that.
So with the Accords, it basically, no matter what you think about registration or anti-registration or anything like that, the movie very much just tells you that Captain America is correct at every turn.
Just to make it, the movie never actually mentioned that word.
Oh yes, in the comics, in the Civil War comics, there's no Accords. It's a registration act, which is much more serious because if you're a superpowered individual, you have to register with the government.
Yes.
So that's a more big issue, which they could have done in the movie, which we'll get to in the bigger rewrite. But for this one, we won't. This will be the Accords in this one.
I'll calm down.
But yeah, Kai, take it easy there. Yeah. But this movie made it very clear that Captain America had to be correct. Because on the I didn't even notice it when I first watched it, but on the rewatch, it was like every time something came up, it was like, oh yeah, Captain America is of course correct with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can mention the War Machine.
It's just very hard to watch it. Yeah, because then we have the War Machine part where the scene where we meet Black Panther. Right, this is one we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then him and Tony. Him and Captain America are running through the tunnels.
And Bucky too.
At twice Usain Bolt speed.
Yeah.
And then
fast.
With Bucky too. And then they're
Bucky
flipping cars. They're doing all that. It was honestly a really cool scene.
Great chasing.
Because it's one of the things. Civil War has some really good action.
Yeah.
It does.
I think some of the best in the MCU.
Yeah. Because I think it kind of takes some inspiration from the Winter Soldier one, where it's like more
hand-to-hand combat focused
and less CGI.
Less CGI, yeah, more like actual effects.
At least in the beginning part of the fight, really good. Because you have like Black Panther on the rooftop. That was awesome.
Yeah. So then after we meet Black Panther, which is a great action scene. The chase scene's great. The fighting is great. Then War Machine drops down, and he's like working with the German police, and then he arrests Cap, Bucky.
It's not a full arrest though, right? It's
Not
like
a full arrest, yeah.
Pseudo arrest.
It's a pseudo, yeah. So that's the thing too. Another thing with the Accords, like they're not in handcuffs. They're like in the back of a CIA van, just getting driven to some CIA complex or
and
something.
these are superheroes.
And these superheroes. So like you'd think, hey, they broke the rules. They should be some kind of handcuffs, like any kind of like restraint.
Imagine this kind of response to like Red Superman.
Yeah, but instead they just
Red Sun is
the
his
Red
name?
Sun, yeah.
Yeah.
Instead they just trust them to like not break out. And it's like that kind of defeats the whole point of the Accords. If like the only consequence is like, oh, you guys sit in the back of a van now, and it's like we trust you.
House arrest.
We still trust you though. It's like okay, but with the whole thing of War Machine arresting them though, is that it gives us a glimpse of like the Avengers working with the United Nations, like working with international governments. Because you have War Machine now. I think they were in Germany for that scene. So you have War Machine working with Vienna. You have War Machine working with those police and the SWAT team to arrest these these superheroes, and it's like that's a pretty big implication there that the Avengers are now acting as like military and police officers, right? But that's never brought up again. And War Machine's the only one we see actually doing that, and I feel like it was a cop out to pick War Machine for that scene.
Yes.
Because I feel like War Machine's almost like a quasi Avenger because he's like working with the military still.
Yeah,
I think.
He's literally part of the military.
Yeah, he's in the Air Force, so it's like. It's almost like you're like, yeah, maybe he was working as an Avenger, maybe just because he was already with the United States military doesn't really count. And it's like, well, you know what? That should have been a more pressing thing. It kind of again like skirts the conflict in that scene,
which is something that it's going to come up often in this movie and happens. All right, it doesn't even happen in just this movie. Remember, you were talking about Winter Soldier.
Yeah. So the skirting conflict thing comes up a lot with these movies. Every time, like in the MCU, especially with Captain America, every time they get close to bringing up a really important issue that could be like a philosophical issue or anything, they just immediately gloss it over with anything else. So, Winter Soldier,
they go right up to it and then they just stop.
And then they fall back. Yeah, they fall back to some kind of cliche.
All the time.
So like in Winter Soldier, in that one, basically Nick Fury wants to release these 3 giant helicarriers with a bunch of guns on them to like eliminate threats before they even happen. And Captain America has a big problem with this because he thinks it's like sacrificing freedom for security, and he doesn't like that. And he thinks it's introducing fear to control people, right?
It's a Patriot Act.
It's exactly the Patriot kind of thing, and he's very much against that. And instead of the movie tackling this, they instead have it where, okay, you know what? Actually, Hydra was inside S.H.I.E.L.D. all along, so now we have to take down Hydra and take down S.H.I.E.L.D., and Nick Fury has to help Captain America take down S.H.I.E.L.D./Hydra. And I was like, at the end of the movie, they're working. Captain America and Nick Fury are working together again, but they still disagreed on that initial topic. That never was brought up again.
It wasn't even resolved.
It wasn't. It was just that. Oh wait, turns out Hydra's here. They're definitely bad guys, right?
The audience just gets told it's right.
Yeah, and it's like it's a very popular debate now of like security versus freedom. It's always been like which was more important, and like instead of making that Captain America address that, they skirt out of the conflict by just having Hydra took over, so it's not really Nick Fury's fault.
Exactly.
Even though they had a huge disagreement, but same thing like in this movie. There's a disagreement, and there's just there's actually villains involved. It's not really a debate. You know?
And Captain America's right de facto.
Captain America's right de facto. Yeah. So that's like a big issue throughout the movie.
And then we go to the compound scene. So as the movie goes on, then General Ross comes in and he slams on the table.
Yeah.
Sokovia Accords.
Yeah, so this is actually more towards the beginning of the movie than the other things we were just talking about. This is more a little backtracking.
Yes.
This is when they first are introduced to the Accords, and when they first have their 2-second debate about it as a team. Yeah, of course. They have a little debate as a team about it, which is, like I said earlier, we're going to be going more in depth into this debate at the end of the video.
Yeah.
But for right now, there was a couple small things that we were very surprised didn't happen in this debate, but then we're going to do a whole read of it at the end. But the first thing that we were very surprised is they mentioned all these Avenger conflicts that happened, that, you Avengers are so irresponsible and because of these reasons, and they list New York City when aliens invaded, and at the time, the Avengers were working under S.H.I.E.L.D. and were working under the...
They were working under Sokovia Accords.
Under some kind of government control.
Right.
Because S.H.I.E.L.D. and they entered S.H.I.E.L.D. and the World Security Council in that movie, which was going to nuke New York City. Remember Iron Man brought the nuke into space?
That's right. Yeah. Right? I forgot about that. Yeah.
So they really saved... Like, in that one, they're really in the clear. Like, what,
that one was infuriating when they brought it up. It kind of seemed like the writers, for a second, were just like, oh yeah, this happened. That's wait.
The Avengers were here.
They were perfectly justified, because if they didn't show up, New York City was going to either be bombed by the military
or
be
nuked.
completely decimated by alien race. So,
Yeah.
like, what was the... Like, with Ultron and Hulkbuster, which are the two that... They brought up Ultron. They did, right?
That's why it's called the Sokovia Accords.
Because the whole Sokovia Accords...
Because the whole Sokovia was all Ultron.
But to be fair, all they brought up was the fact that they destroyed the city. They didn't really bring up, hey, you literally created Ultron.
Yeah, they almost treated Ultron the same as the aliens, where it's like, no, hold up. Tony created Ultron.
Yes.
That should have been talked about a little more.
Exactly, yeah.
And also, like again in that movie, was the Hulkbuster scene, where
never brought up.
Tony himself fights the Hulk. So two Avengers are fighting in Korea, causing a whole bunch of collateral damage, right? That's like no one else's fault but them. If anything, it's Scarlet Witch's fault, and she was under Ultron's guidance at the time when she made Hulk go crazy in that scene. So, again, tied to Ultron, really.
No matter what, it's tied to the Avengers.
Tied to the Avengers specifically, and Tony.
Yes.
Right? But specifically the Avengers, where it's like, hey, you guys were super at fault with these two instances, and they didn't highlight them.
No.
And they should have, because not only are they tied to the Avengers, but it's really like Tony's responsible for that.
Yes.
Which would help explain why he feels so guilty and so pro Accords. Because, we've seen in the past with Tony.
Yes.
Like you mentioned.
Yeah, so... But before we go into that, because I know what I know what you're talking about, you dirty dog. But when when it comes to like bringing up the Hulkbuster and stuff, not bringing it up is a clear cop out and saying, "Hey, Captain America's right." Because if you bring these kinds of things up, it's like, "Oh, that's right. That's right. These crazy things happen."
That's a good point. Yeah. Because like when you watch that scene, there's like a bunch of times where like, hey, civilians probably died.
Yeah.
When Iron Man and Hulk fought.
And when Hulk and Iron Man fought, which was an awesome fight. They didn't need to be a fight there. Like that's what it almost pissed me off. They bring up the New York thing where the only other option was complete destruction of some form.
In one way or another, yeah. It was the government or the aliens.
But then they don't bring up the only option, the only instance.
Yeah.
Sorry, the only instance, where there was an option where literally nothing was going to happen.
Where if the Avengers didn't exist, none of the bad stuff that happened in
would have happened.
Avengers 2 would have happened.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, like they mentioned Sokovia, which like you said, they don't mention Ultron, which is like literally Tony's fault.
Yeah.
Like they treat Sokovia the same as New York, which was a weird choice. Like you said, it's
intentional.
It's to make Cap right.
A choice like that is intentional. It's hey, let's just we have to make a movie about Civil War, so let's just go to the line. We have the graphic novels, we have all of that, but we don't want to go too far because then everybody in those movie theaters is going to go, oh, this is so obvious.
Yeah.
Tony's right.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because Tony is the one, we watch Iron Man 1. All of us have seen... Oh, lost my pen.
Nice.
All of us have seen Iron Man 1. And he goes through an entire character change because he's seeing the effects of his weapons.
Yes.
Right? Of Stark Industries' weapons.
The missile that almost kills him and all that.
It makes perfect sense Tony's the one who's going to look at this instance and go, okay, we need to change what we're doing this.
Yeah, because it's almost the exact same arc he had in Iron Man 1, where he sees his weapon, Ultron, or the Avengers, whatever.
In this case, it's not Stark Industries.
Yeah,
it's the Avengers.
It's the Avengers and Ultron by extension. He sees those weapons being used at the wrong way, at the wrong time, in the wrong place, whatever, and he has his remorse over that, and so he wants to change his way over that. So having that change would make a more convicted Tony Stark, more convicted to the Accords, and actually like them in use, really. Because we didn't get that in the movie. We got them barely talking about it, and I wasn't convinced that he actually cared about them.
Yeah, going along those, remember when he tried to get Captain America to sign the whole pen thing?
Oh, the two.
And remember when he brings up Pepper Potts?
Oh yeah, same thing there.
Why?
Yeah, same exact thing. Yeah, so if you guys don't remember that scene, he's talking to Cap, and like they're just talking about what they think about the Accords again.
Yeah.
And Iron Man just says something where he's just like, "Oh yeah, I wasn't having a lot of time for Pepper, so I thought the Accords would split the difference." He says, and it's like,
what?
It's like, it's like, hey, in this movie, they clearly wanted a Tony who didn't care about the Accords and was just doing it just cause. But it's like that makes sense. Like, why is that Civil War then? If one person barely cares and the other person kind of cares, how is that a Civil War? It's like, oh yeah, I just want to spend more time with Pepper or something, so I was going to sign it. It's like, have more conviction.
The people and the producers probably told the writers, like, hey, listen, Captain America 3 probably not getting a lot of hits, but if we name it Civil War, they'll flock to the theaters, and we did.
Yeah, because that's really an issue with it. But then we have, after the Pepper Potts scene, a couple scenes later, we have the problem that spawned the whole idea for this video, which is why I made Steven rewatch the movie with me.
We actually paused at this scene.
Yeah, it was because of this one scene that in theaters 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was like immediately, like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
For the movie, and this is when Captain America and his team break out of that with Bucky. They break out of the CIA compound, wherever they were with Sharon Carter, and they're headed to the airport, and because they're going to escape to go to Siberia to fight those 5 super soldiers. So General Ross is talking to Tony, and he's telling him that Steve is now a criminal, and they have to all get arrested. So he's going to send in like the Marines or something to arrest them. And Tony then just starts like begging Ross to give him like 3 days.
Crazy.
He's like 72 hours. Give me 72 hours.
No, I thought it was 36.
I think he got 36, but he asked for 72.
Okay.
But and he's like, just give me these amount of hours, and I'll bring them in. He's like, I know Cap. He's like, we can talk to him. It's not a big deal.
What are they skirting here, Bobby?
Conflict.
I'm skirting conflict.
Again. So the thing with this scene is such an obvious, just reversal that fixes the whole issue we have here of them barely talking about the Accords.
Yeah.
And the fix here is, instead of Ross wanting to send like Marines or Special Force guys,
which again, by the way, makes no sense because we've all seen Captain America 1.
Yeah, we've all seen what he could do to soldiers.
Yeah.
Right. And like on that note too, Tony shouldn't be so worried because in the movie Tony's like very worried that Captain America is going to get killed by these Marines. And it's like he has all these crazy superheroes on his side, but Ross should be not wanting to send the Marines in because it's dangerous for them and they're fighting superheroes. It's not fair to them. He should be wanting to use the other half of the Avengers who signed the Accords.
Yes.
He should be so excited to finally use those resources.
Otherwise, and this is the primary issue. This is why this scene creates the worst part of the movie, is because if Ross doesn't have the power to send in Tony via the Sokovia Accords, then they have no consequences and do nothing for the movie other than a few conversations.
No. And, if you want to say, Ross isn't the UN, okay, they could have a very quick UN meeting where they
and be like, yes, let's not risk soldiers' lives against
like an emergency vote, right?
Yeah.
Just whatever you want to do to fix that. Where Tony does not want to go because, like in this movie, the whole Zemo subplot is happening with the 500 soldiers. So Tony, he doesn't really know what's going on yet, but isn't so gung ho to arrest Cap because in the movie we get, he even doesn't want to arrest Cap. He just wants to protect him from the Marines.
Which is crazy.
He's like, just come peacefully, it's fine, whatever. But
he's
it's
very
so
diplomatic when he lands at the airport.
But the thing is, with Ross forcing Tony to go, like if Tony doesn't want to arrest Cap, because Tony just doesn't really... Tony was so close in that scene when they were signing, he was so close to getting Cap to sign it.
Yeah.
And he still thinks that, right? So he doesn't want to go arrest Cap. He wants this to kind of get glossed over, and then in a few days maybe he's thinking he'll get him to sign it again, whatever, and they can make amends and still reunite.
Which, again, I'm sorry, solidifies how little Tony actually cares about the Sokovia Accords.
Yes, he barely cares about them, right?
Yeah.
But, which is fine.
And for this movie,
it's fine if they had him not care about them, if they then showed at least like the consequences of the Accords, where now Ross can force you to go arrest Captain America and the rest of the Avengers because you signed.
Yes, at least show the consequences. Then Tony can roll up, airport fight scene can happen, Tony can learn about the Winter Soldiers, be like, oh, Cap was right. We can still get the insertion from the writers that Cap is right no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we still get that vibe. So when they land in the airport, they have their little conversation where Captain America, because he does tell Tony that, but Tony just seems to go over his head. He doesn't really respond to that at all. But in this one, he could have it where he's like, listen, we can talk about that later, but I have to bring you in because of the Accords. Like, make it where it's like a very clear consequence of what happened. Airport fight scene happens. Half of them get arrested, whatever, like in the original movie. And then we'll have it where Tony gets the information from Falcon about where those 5 super soldiers are.
Yes.
Because, Zemo is now revealed to be the mastermind. They all realize what happened. So he wants to go help Captain America.
And then Ross.
So he interrogates Falcon. Ross hears it this time. There's no cutting of the audio, right? So Ross hears everything. And Tony goes, okay, I'm going to now bring the Avengers so we can go help Captain America out. Right? Right? And then Ross would say, no. It's Siberia. You can't just go there.
Russia.
Yeah, you can't just go there.
Yeah.
And that, to me...
Tony would have to break it.
Tony would then have to... Because we're trying to make Captain America automatically right in this version of the movie.
Yes.
Because they wanted that in the original version, right? So we'll make that more apparent by having it where Tony wants to go and bring the Avengers that have signed, like Vision and everybody. Ross says no. So then we get the scene where he leaves in the helicopter and he goes rogue by himself Black Panther follows him.
Yes.
They go into that abandoned
all of the
nuclear
rest happens.
compound. He learns about his parents. The whole ending happens exactly the same way.
Yes.
So
because at this point, Tony has disagreed with the Sokovia Accords now because of an instance that the MCU would have inserted.
Yes.
So we have to have the reignition of the emotion.
Yes. So with the mother scene, finding out how his mother died by Bucky. So now with these changes that we've made so far, the movie almost plays out exactly the same, where the bigger details haven't really changed, and the movie ends the same way. So it's like there's no repercussions in other movies.
Cap's still right.
Very
important.
You know, it's like going into Infinity War, the things are still dominoes are still in the right places.
Yes.
Everything's still the same. But we have some changes that make the Accords a little more apparent.
We have changes that keep tension throughout the movie, because I feel like once Tony begs to go help Captain America, you're like, wait, the movie just ends.
Yeah,
already.
because then it's no longer about the Accords. After that one very weak debate scene, you almost forget about the Accords at that point, because it almost becomes more like a Bucky-focused movie, where it's like Captain America is a criminal because he helped Bucky escape.
Yes.
In the early scene where War Machine arrests them.
Yes.
Like, that alone would have made him a criminal regardless of the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah.
Like, you could take the Sokovia Accords out and just keep that one scene in there where Captain America fights police officers to help Bucky out, and the movie could happen the exact same way after that.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
He's still a criminal, he's still on the run with Bucky, with Falcon chose to help him, whatever. You don't even need the Accords for that.
No.
Which makes you realize how ridiculous the whole thing is.
They really could have just made a Captain America 3.
Yes. Which will be another video we're making.
More movies!
More videos is Captain America 3.
It never ends, baby.
Yeah. But for this one, though, this is our short rewrite.
Yes.
Our smaller changes for Captain America 3 Civil War.
And next, we're going to do the debate.
So right now we're going to go into the debate, because we are going to talk about that, how weak it was and what we would have changed to make the debate a little bit stronger, just for any version of the movie. And then, in another video, we're going to do our full rewrite of Captain America Civil War. But then, we have a second video coming that we completely rewrite this movie, Civil War.
Yes. Yeah, so we're going to do Captain America 3, and then we'll do Avengers Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be 2 videos. Yeah, it's going to be Captain America 3, then Avengers Civil War. I think it's what should have happened.
Yes, exactly.
But, so for now, we'll get into the debate.
We're going to do the debate next after a message from our sponsors. Alright. Back from our sponsor break. We are, during the sponsor break, even though it was very short, we came up with this is just going to be more of a nitpicking, what we're doing right now, of that debate scene in the compound. And then we're gonna have a part of our big rewrite, the Avengers Civil War. We're gonna have another discussion about this.
A whole rewritten debate.
Yeah, it's a whole rewritten debate too, because everything changes.
Because the context changes too. But for this one, was the nitpicks we had with the actual debate. Because that is the only time they talk about the Accords, and even that was pretty bad. So we had some problems we want to talk about separately, because it's almost like a separate issue.
Yeah, exactly. You want to start off? Because we took some notes while we rewatched the scene.
Yeah, I'll start off. So I will say, earlier in the video, you mentioned how Tony, when he found out his weapons were being used for bad, he completely, changed his mind and stopped his company from making weapons.
Yeah.
So it would make sense for him to agree with the Accords, which is interesting because we forgot, but he does literally say that in that scene. And the reason why we forgot, because we forgot he said that, and I think we should remember because we came up with that point. But the reason why we forgot he said that is because he says it once and then he immediately drops it as a point.
Yeah,
because Captain America just says, "Oh yeah, but you chose that though," and it becomes like a different issue. But it's like that is something that he definitely could have, harked on a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, everyone has like one line that they shoot out and then they don't back it up more. They just say the one line and then that's it.
The debate should have been like twice the length, because Vision had some really good things to say.
Yeah.
And then he's just gone.
Yeah, same with Vision.
He says 2 lines. The rest of it.
He says 2 lines and then he was done.
And he had the best sentence in the entire.
He was the only one who seemed to be actually, him and then maybe Rhodey, the only ones actually for the Accords.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, every single time I watch that scene, when Tony Stark brings up the one kid, it kind of doesn't feel like his character.
No. It definitely feels out of character.
It feels like something Captain America would do. Yes. Captain America's always that kind of guy.
Very small scope.
We literally just spent the last 3 minutes talking about how Tony is like bigger picture and everything like that. He did save, in Sokovia, he did save an asteroid from hitting the Earth and destroying everybody. So
yes. And I was, when he was talking about that kid who died, and it kind of goes along with, like, everyone throws out a line and doesn't, harken on it more, is Tony talks about the Charlie Spencer who was killed in Sokovia, and Captain America just says, you know, like, oh, if you sign this, you're just shifting blame, though. You don't give up just because you lose somebody.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, the big thing with that they didn't like say, and like, you know, it was a big issue for me when I was watching it. It's like, if Sokovia happened, let's say the Accords were signed, and the Sokovia incident happened, the Avengers would still definitely be sent to Sokovia.
Yes,
and it's
this is very important.
And you know what happened was, they would solve the problem the same exact way, and they would, you know, drop the building on Charlie Spencer, and he still would have died. But Tony Stark wouldn't have himself to blame. He would get to blame the UN for making him go do that. So, because it's not like he regretted going to Sokovia. Like, he still clearly wanted to help the Sokovians and the whole world, because they saved the world with that one. But he just wanted to not feel the blame for the couple of people who died in the collateral damage. And that seems like to be his main motivation for wanting this thing signed in the movie. Which, like, I feel like Captain America could have attacked a little bit more.
Yes.
It's like, hey, it's like, you don't really believe in the Accords. You just want to blame somebody else. Like, say a little more and break down how, like, even if the UN sent you to Sokovia, it's not like it could have prevented civilian death.
And I will say this, I just thought about this while you were saying it. If you're shifting blame like that, right, you're not a vessel for the learning process there. Because you can just say, oh, a few kids died,
Yeah.
but it's the government's problem,
You don't even feel bad about it.
bad about it.
Yeah.
I think being a superhero, at least for the MCU, it's like, okay, they dropped a building, or an entire city, and he gets to sit at home and think about the fact that still some people died, and he learns from that and becomes a bit of superhero, and that's why people trust him. If he was just, you know, the Hammer Tech drones that just go by the government, they don't learn, mostly because they're drones. But you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, if you're just following orders.
Because like Captain America kind of almost goes into this debate. He brings up the right to choose thing.
Yeah, he almost mentions it.
They almost get into the core of the Civil War debate, and you obviously don't need to bring it up like exposition. You don't want to do that either.
No.
But he could have at least brought up that, you know, he says the right to choose, right? Tony could have went back saying, does a superhero deserve the right to choose, right?
Yeah.
Our actions, like when he was working at Stark Industries, his actions in that company didn't just affect a few people outside who are his family that he could immediately see. It affected people around the world that he never even knew about. When you're a billionaire or a superhero, your actions are different than a normal person.
Yeah, anyone with authority or power. Like, right to choose doesn't apply to, like, I get to choose how the world is saved. It's like, well, hold up. That's different than anything else.
You get to choose what sandwich you eat in the morning. You don't get to choose, well, do we nuke them or should I save everybody? You don't really get to choose that.
As one person who's not elected, the only thing is you have superpowers. It's like, what right to choose are you talking about there? Like, the right to save people. So, yeah, we know that Captain America's a good guy. But it's like, if if the Avengers were real and we were, like, just civilians in the world, we wouldn't just trust them blindly, you know? No. Be like, hey, what if they go bad or something? It's like,
and we know because
they have the right to choose. Just
what are we gonna do? Sit at home and say, well, they have superpowers, and I guess it's a good threshold, even though we know supervillains exist.
Yeah.
So
having powers doesn't make you a good guy.
No.
So
learning from the mistakes does though. So that's what Captain America could go back at. If you are deflecting it,
that'd be a good thing to say.
Yeah. If you are deflecting it, then you're also not learning how a superhero is supposed to learn.
Yeah. So another thing I noticed, and because my issues with that debate were more like everyone's reason for signing was just very much a facade. Like Tony's thing was just he disagreed with it really, but he just felt bad and so he wanted to sign. And everyone else who wanted to sign, for the most part, really seemed to be signing either because one, they thought it was going to happen anyway,
which is a weird thing to say.
It's like it's kind of just defeats the whole purpose. It's like, why are you debating it then, right?
Yeah.
So they thought it was going to happen anyway, so there's no point in fighting it, which is just a ridiculous point.
Yeah.
Or because it's not a debate then. It's not a debate. Because you could be so against it but still say that. You know what I mean? Like even Captain America said that. But or they wanted to like sign it, but then still go against the Accords. Like Black Widow was like, well, maybe if we sign it, we can still have like one hand on the wheel, which to me implies she wants to, which like smartest thing to do in real life, but like would be she wants to sign it, but then really do their own thing anyway.
Which is what they end up doing.
But it's like it's just so much like not a philosophical debate at that point.
No.
Because it's just like, oh, how can we like avoid any consequence? We'll just sign it so they don't retire us. But then when anything happens that we feel like we really want to go and change, you know, go save people even though they tell us no, we'll just go anyway because we have one hand on the wheel because we signed it. And it's like, well then you're definitely against the Accords then, because you still want to do your own thing.
Right.
You just want to pretend that you're working with the UN.
Exactly.
And which is like fair, but like they didn't go into that. They just like had her say that, and okay, Black Widow is now Team Iron Man because she mentioned signing. But it's like, well, she mentioned signing, and they do have her eventually go against the Accords. But I feel like for the actual debate scene though, they could have had someone be like, hey, do you even like agree with this then, or are you just signing to avoid a problem?
They could have brought up, hey, your arguments kind of suck.
Yeah.
Like something.
Yeah.
It really does feel like that scene was kind of rushed when because we just rewatched it.
It was like a 2 minute. It was not even a 2 minute scene. It was very rushed.
And it's like this is supposed to be the whole Civil War.
Yeah. And they were all talking like middle schoolers. Like Falcon was just kind of like, pantsing around. He was kind of mad, like just like very emotional. Like no one brought up decent points that they then debated. Only Steve kind of did, but even his were so like so immature.
Both Steve and Tony had some good points, but they also get a little too childish at points, get a little too dramatic, and they always don't dig into them deeper.
Yeah.
A debate is when some person says something and someone fires back at them. Not one person says something and another person just says something else.
Yeah, those are the most annoying debates to watch because they happen in real life. Like you'll say something and then someone else just says something else, like their point. It's not related at all.
Listen to you.
It's like that's not a debate. You're shouting your point of view, which is what they did in the movie. Which is it was like this is the kind of thing where it's like characters sometimes seem like they're not talking to each other because they're just yelling out their ideas.
Vision had that whole little speech, right?
And then it was
no one said anything like,
no
"Oh God,
Vision,
that's a good point, Vision." They're like, "Who's that guy?"
Yeah,
and they just kept on talking.
Yeah, no one addressed it. And then just Tony. It was very emotionally driven, which is fair, but it's like clearly they wanted to avoid any actual philosophical implications of this, because like the right to choose and security versus freedom and all these very
it's interesting,
very prominent philosophical issues are very interesting, or political issues. Anything, it's like
and
very
the other
interesting.
thing, Vision brings up a really cool point about superheroes.
Oh yeah,
he brings up, does the power that they have invite more power to fight them? For instance, if we do have UFOs currently watching us daily, they could be looking at us going, okay, this is not a threat. If a superhero breaks out, the UFO aliens might think, okay, this is a threat now. Now we're getting a little bit scared. This isn't fun anymore. We have to handle this now, and then they come down and invade us.
Yeah.
Right. For instance, which is literally what happened with New York. Not the same way, but aliens came and invaded us. And he makes a really good point. Is it just coincidence, or is there a causality between superheroes being exponentially more and the fights being exponentially worse?
Supervillains rising up and all. No, 100%. You're right. Like that's a point.
And then no one talks about it.
That's a point that could have been like someone could have responded to, but no. Then someone else just said their next piece.
They don't even riff off of it. Tony could have been like, it was a great point, and then get into his thing. They didn't.
Yeah, the only thing that happened was Captain America said, so you're saying it's our fault? And then they ended it.
They get all like tensed up like middle schoolers about it, right?
Like, dude, it's like, he brought up a really interesting point.
When watching it, it's almost like, are you the superheroes who dropped the island? Are you superheroes who fought the aliens in the city? Do you understand on a mature level what it is you're doing?
It seemed very, like no one really cared.
Yeah.
Which is the issue. Like, Captain America didn't want to sign it. And, like, he seemed to care about not wanting to sign it. His arguments were just kind of, like, not really that fleshed out. But everyone who was against it... But could have been. And everyone who was, like, for signing just seemed like they had the weirdest reasons. Like I said here, where it was just like, I don't want to feel guilty, or like it's gonna happen anyway, or like, well, at least we can sign and then just do our own thing anyway. And it's like, who's really for the Accords then? And it was just very like weak. So that's why like that debate scene bothered me, because like no one had any conviction.
Yep.
Really.
And then the Raw scene really bothers also. But before we go on for like 10 hours, we're gonna wrap this one up, but we'll see you hopefully soon for the main rewrite.
The main
for Avengers Civil War.
Avengers Civil War, yep.
How it should have been, really.
Yep.